Notes 10F. Difference of squares. Objective. I can factor expressions that are a difference of squares. Essential question. What is difference of squares and how do I factor it? Be sure to write down how you feel today on your notes. And 2 words to note on your vocabulary is square and square root. Here are your formulas. Write down the following squares. I squared is -1. 2x to the 0th power squared is 4. 3x 1 to the 2nd power is 9x squared, and so on. So how we do these, we multiply 3 times 3 gives you 9. 1 times 2 gives you 2. 4 times 4 gives you. 2 times 2 gives you. Take about 5 minutes to find the squares on each on your foldable. You may use a calculator. Pause the video, figure these out, and write them down. So, how did you do? Were you able to find most of these without using a calculator? Write down the ones that you were not able to find. Let's move on. Difference of squares. N squared minus 4. Let's recall our formula from before. A squared minus b squared equals parentheses a minus b times a plus b. First we want to identify what a squared is and what b squared is. A squared is the first term. We have n squared. B squared is the second term. That's 4. So that means that a is the square root of n squared. That cancels. We just have n. And b, we're going to find the square root of b squared and 4. So we have 2. And wherever we take the square root of a number like this, we put a plus and a minus sign in front of it. So if we plug this into the formula, we have n plus 2 and n minus 2. This is our factored form using the difference of squares formula. Let's look at that next one. We have 9n squared minus 1. So let's first identify a squared, which is 9n squared, and b squared, which is 1. Take the square roots. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of n squared is n. And that's a. Square root of b squared is the square root of 1, where b is either plus or minus 1. So we have parentheses 3n plus 1 and 3n minus 1. So that is our factored form. We put the plus 1 right here and we put the minus 1 right here. The 3n is on both factors. Let's try the next one. N to the 6th power minus 25. So let's recall the equation from before and identify our terms. A squared is n to the 6th power. B squared is 25. So we're going to take the square root of n squared and a squared and n to the 6th power. So we have a equals, when we take the square root of something, we half the exponent. So half of 6 is 3. The square root of 25 is plus or minus 5. That's b. So let's plug that into the formula. So we have n to the third power plus 5 and n to the third power minus 5. Let's look at the next one. We have n to the fourth power minus 100. A squared is that first term, that's n to the fourth power. B squared is our second term, it's 100. To get rid of our squares, we have to take the square root. Half of 2 is 1, so we have a to the first power equals half of 4 is 2, n to the second power. Take the square root of both of these. We have b equals plus or minus 10. So when we plug that into the formula, we get n squared plus 10 times n squared minus 10. And that is our factored form using the difference of squares formula. Let's do one more example. 9x squared minus 4. So let's identify a squared and b squared. A squared is the first term. We have 9x squared. B squared is 4. Let's take the square roots to find a and b. The square root of a to the second power is a because half of 2 is 1. The square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of x squared is x. Let's square root the b's. Square root of b squared is b. Square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. Plug it into the formula. 3x plus 2 times 3x minus 2. That's it. That's our factored form.